maybe give it a minute for everyone to look. We can see the main ones right here. Communication. It's always key, isn't it? Well, I hope you've enjoyed the rest of the event. We've now got the final thing, the panel discussion, which I'm really happy to say that we have on board at the moment. Lee Watson from Aberdeenshire Council Flood Risk and Coast Protection, Sam Long, Chair of Climate Ready Aberdeenshire, and Susan Donald from Aberdeenshire Council's Local Resilience Partnership. And hopefully we'll have coming on quite soon Fiona Mann from Aberdeen City Council Emergency Planning and Resilience. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everybody, three kind of panelists on screen at the moment, to just give a quick summary of what they do and how they can help you, people who are wanting to do some sort of community resilience plan in your local community. And then we'll open it up to bring on board the facilitators from today's 3 breakout sessions to talk about very briefly what the 3 challenges and kind of 3 solutions that they kind of came up with all of you came up with in the breakout sessions. And then we'll open the floor to questions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lee, Sam, and then Susan. So Lee, if you want to start.
Hello, hi. My name's Lee Watson, Aberdeenshire Council from the Flood Risk Coast Protection team. So my day job is sort of delivering on the Flood Risk Management Act actions identified. But the main point being the major flood schemes, they're, we're all aware that the costs, is very expensive, and the likelihood is, the flood schemes are getting further down the agenda. But so it's explaining to people, the principal responsibility for flood resilience lies with the property owner. So, things that we can do, is property. Property resilience. The council, we offer property level protection at reduced costs and things. So it's making these people aware. But it's property level protection. I would say it's only one part of it. It's awareness. It's in the absence of SEPA being on the call today, explaining about SEPA's flood warnings, flood alerts, and flood warning systems, and signing up for these. And there's also daily guidance statements as well. And basically, I can explain issues, like what the council do in preparedness for flood events, but it's mostly flood risk, that I'd be speaking about today.
Fantastic, thanks, Lee. Fiona's on screen, so I'm going to go to Fiona, and she can introduce herself.
Thank you, Alison. I was panicking there. I could see you, but you guys couldn't see me. Good morning. It still is morning, yes. I'm Fiona Mann from Aberdeen City Council. I'm an Emergency Planning and Resilience Lead for the city. One of the functions of my role is to encourage and increase our community resilience projects. So a key priority for us this year is to promote community, business and individual resilience across the city. We only have 2 community resilience groups, and one of my major aims for the year is to increase that and to create a template that we can then go on every year and increase as we go, because we all need to work together, as we all saw over the last few years in particular. So here today just to talk about what we're doing, how you can get engaged with us, and how we can support you.
Brilliant, thanks Fiona. Sam.
Thanks, Alison. My name's Sam Long. I have a voluntary role as the chair of CRA, so that's Climate Ready Aberdeenshire. So there's a slightly different response mechanism developing for climate issues in the Shire rather than in the city. It's a cross-sectoral body, so we work with partners including NESCAN, SEPA, NHS, NFU Scotland and others, looking kind of at a macro level of who's doing what, pulling it together into a strategy that says what are we doing about adaptation and mitigation issues in the Shire, and then trying to make sense of a good way forward with all of that practice. My quick observation on what we've heard today is my very short observation would be there's some very committed individuals. Just as with all the climate change issues, there's a whole bunch of people who are very committed to driving change and trying to establish change. Our biggest challenge is taking the message beyond the 50-odd folk on this call today and getting to the residents of the city and the Shire, which is a major issue for all of us on the topics that we've tackled so far. That's me.
Brilliant, thanks, Sam. It is always about communication, as you saw on the word count. And now, last but not least, Susan.
Thank you, Alison. My role is as Risk and Resilience Manager for the team that responds in the event of an emergency situation, that plans to increase resilience for to work with a whole range of partners at increasing resilience across the piece. One of our major pieces of work that we're looking to do in the next year is to develop a community resilience strategy for Aberdeenshire, one that we're aiming to develop from, if you like, the bottom up, with communities inputting to that. We've got a series of workshops coming up in October to look at that aspect of things. And our focus on that strategy is going to be on the 4 key themes that actually emerged from the engagement events that we've held, given recent storms, but with the focus on being resilient for the consequences of an event, whether that's weather related or for any other cause. So that's where we are.
Brilliant, Susan. And maybe you could share more details of the workshops in October when you have the information, and we can pop it out to everybody on this in this event, or in our NESCAN newsletter, which I think is in the chat. But if not, we'll pop it up so we can get that information out to you. Okay, what I'm going to do now is invite Karina and Chris and Tara to come on board to talk about their feedback from their breakout sessions. Chris?
I'm looking down at my notes, and communication is written so many times. So that was a big theme coming out of our discussion. Thanks so much to everybody who contributed, by the way. It was really, really great. And can I just go straight into one of our questions, maybe, to go? No, or not, Alison?
Do that last, Chris, please.
Right. Okay. So really getting the message out to people who are not necessarily affiliated to community groups, getting the point across that we are not this box, this grab bag, the items that every household needs to have ready, not just the people who are aware and taking part in events like this, the young families, the older individuals living on their own. We talked a lot about the challenge. So one of the solutions to that challenge is everybody being more neighbourly. And so going to people's houses, not just at the time of a crisis, but before, to have these conversations about how we can all get ready. So those were my main outcomes from the discussion. And one of the big things that my group, we didn't really get a chance to discuss, but we really wanted some answers to, which I hope some of the panelists can give us today, is what are the council's plans for large and long-term infrastructure response. Many people are still relying on sandbags in response to the coming floods, which we know are going to happen in certain areas. And so what are the strategies that are going to be put in place for changing, say, for example, land use? What are the different mixes of crops or methods for drainage in agricultural lands that can be put in place to prevent the flooding in the first place? And also we mentioned trees a lot. Does anybody know anything about long-term strategies regarding the need for the power companies to keep the power lines free of shallow-rooted trees? Yeah, that's, I'll finish there for now. Thanks.
That's your question, is it, Chris?
Yeah. What are the long-term, in large-scale, long-term infrastructure response? Can we know more about that?
And that is something that came out of the group that I facilitated too. One of the things was really from a farmer saying, you know, I know that we are not going to have hay this year because, you know, there's not enough water. But the hay, the kind of straw grows better next to hedgerows and tree lines. So, you know, that where is the kind of long-term planning alongside this kind of short-term well, yeah, what do we do now kind of planning. So Karina, is your broadband good now?
I'm gonna give it a go. I hope you can.
Oh no, it's not. No.
Okay.
No.
Do you want
Sorry.
to go, Alison?
Yeah, I'll just do it for our group. So basically in our group, communication came up really top. Like, how do you communicate? Who communicates? So the kind of solutions we came up with were, well, people need to have analog phones. So at least one community centre in that area has an analog phone. So you can just get straight onto communicating. So you don't have to drive for 50 miles or whatever to get onto your mobile phone. That you do have things printed out where GDPR allows, and locked away in filing systems, and that you actually have like a mechanism of alerting people. So what we heard from Mike was that they have a loudspeaker, you know, that can go out to people, but you've already kind of got all the networks in place. So you just got to press the button and people know what they're doing. And I think that's really quite key, preparedness. Also, one of the main issues that came up was vulnerability. And how do you actually know who really needs that kind of help? And there's a lot of difficulty people are finding with getting the list of those people. So there was various different things suggested. Obviously, Braemar Care Trust came up because it's a brilliant community trust where local people can get put in contact with carers, but they have a list of all the people within their area, and therefore it's a one-stop shop to get all the list. Obviously, the councils, how can the councils facilitate with that? What kind of issues are there, and how can we get past that is a big question, which we'll be asking. And there were other things about, you know, just asking people to come forward, or asking people who are neighbours to come forward too, a bit of what Chris was saying about neighbourhood lead stuff. And the rest of it is the geographical spread. You know, you've got complications if you've got really kind of a wide rural area. How do you kind of make sure the communication's there, but also in more denser kind of urban communities, it's less knowledge and neighborliness. So there's different aspects that we have to be aware of. Yeah, so we're going to hear from Tara and then move on quickly to the Q&A session. So Tara.
Hi, I'll start off with an apology. No offense, Chris, but as soon as Chris started talking, my sound just went down. So I didn't hear any of Chris's conversation. So I do apologize if I'm repeating what she had from her group. We'll just start off by saying that we spoke about storms, we spoke about wind and stuff like that. We also spoke about drought as well. I know that's been slightly overshadowed by all the storms and everything, but drought was an issue as well. So it was just to bring that up. So the three main challenges that we had quite a few, but the three main ones were there seems to be a disconnect between the informal work that's going on the ground in communities and the formal work that's going on with local authorities and other organisations, and how can we get that connection better made between those two groups. We also spoke about different responses in each region of Aberdeenshire, and some being better than others, and I think that maybe just depends on the geographical location of the area, or maybe the resources that are available there, or sometimes it depends on the individual council employees who are in that area, or councillors, etc. So there seems to be a little bit of disparity between different regions in Aberdeenshire about what happens when an extreme weather event hits. We spoke about another challenge is the level of expectations of community members and of people, and that needs to be addressed as well. You know, what do local authorities expect, and what do health and social care services expect, and the fire brigade, etc., expect of communities, and what do communities expect of those organisations and those services? And the other, that's the three main challenges I came up with. Sorry. So we led into a conversation about that. And some of the lessons that we learned and ways to get around that is we maybe need more resource into communities and how they can work together across communities. We spoke a lot about communication as well. Now, not just communication with each other in a kind of holistic kind of way, but actual physical, technical, how do we communicate with each other when the power's down, when there's no mobile phone signal. We spoke about the really big importance of analog phones, but we also spoke about the fact that not everybody should be picking up their analog phone, and not everybody in a community should be phoning SSEN or phoning the council, that the hub should be doing this, and then those services aren't overwhelmed by all these people contacting them about the same area and the same place. Alison, you spoke earlier about identifying vulnerable people. We had a conversation about that as well and the challenges around that. But one thing we did come up with, or Stephen came up with, was not for just for vulnerable people, but we know that sometimes local authorities will chap on people's door and go, "Are you okay? We haven't heard from you." And just to put a simple sticker or a poster on your window to go, "I'm okay, I'm just out and about helping my neighbour," or "I'm doing this," or whatever, so we know that person is okay. They've just put a little yellow sticker or something on their window to go, "Hey, I'm fine." We also spoke about a paper list for communities. So not only that they know what to do to prepare for events, how to prepare themselves, but also who to contact when these things happening and when to contact them. How do I prepare? What do I do first when this happens? And then if that hasn't worked, who do I contact in a paper list like that? And the final thing that we spoke of when we were talking about preparedness is, yeah, we should all be taking responsibility for ourselves, but it's also worth noting the affordability of being prepared for things. You know, with the cost of everything going up, sometimes people just can't afford to put these things in place. Sometimes people don't have the mental or physical ability to be prepared for these events, and sometimes they just don't have the time or the awareness or any kind of resources to do it. So how can organizations like the council and things like that help with that aspect as well? So I guess that's the question I could finish on, is how can you support community groups in this whole analog thing so they can communicate with you, and also in the challenge of being prepared? Thank you.
Fantastic. So we've got 3 questions to start off with, but if everyone else can put questions in the chat, then we'll come to them. All right. So the first question that came out Chris's group is about physical kind of like green infrastructure, green and blue infrastructure. How do we ensure long-term planning so that we reduce the risks of kind of these kind of emergencies occurring? Sam, I'm going to start with you because I think that's probably comes under the Climate Ready Aberdeenshire banner, but we'll ask everybody just to see if you've got any input.
I think all these conversations are going to go back to the point around communication and sharing of awareness, right? So if you, from a CRA perspective, if I talk to officers within the council or even the chief exec, the long-term planning is there. There are thoughts and considerations around zoning, floodplain arrangements. The complexity is joining all the dots between those different initiatives. You'll always find a specialist like a Susan within the council who has responsibility or is acting on something. The greatest challenge I find in the CRA body is joining those dots, and then through the likes of yourselves, Alison, actually communicating that out to people. These are macro trends. They're going to take organizational and behavioral changes. It's going to take a decade probably to really get the ball rolling. Storm Arwen should be and is very popular very keen in the mindset of people living in the city and the Shire, but you travel outside that area and it had lesser of an impact. I may not be answering the direct question, and in part that's because I'm an independent chair. I'm not a council employee, but from the meetings I go to, we do talk about these issues, and when I meet with officers, chief exec, these are the topics that come up. When you speak to the likes of NFU Scotland, gets really challenging at that point. How do you get the balance of food production, sustainability, and things like flooding preparation and so on? And I'm not sure I'm giving you any answers or assurance, Alison. I do feel that the right conversations are had. I just think we need to do a better job of letting people know that these are things that are in process, and communities need to step forward and ask questions if they don't feel it's appropriate. Most people like Susan, the officers I meet, they deeply care and passionate, right? They're trying to do the right thing and get the ball going in the right direction. We just need broader engagement across society as a whole to improve awareness or ask more questions.
And I suppose,
is that a cop-out?
No, I think that the work that Adaptation Scotland does, the sniffer, is actually and using a place-based lens on adaptation. What we did see with Climate Ready Strathdon might be kind of something along those lines as well. But Susan, you put your hand up, and it would be appropriate to come to you now.
Yes. Thanks, Alison. I would agree with Sam that there is a lot of work going on in the background. It's maybe not particularly visible, but there is a lot of work and discussion taking place on what that longer term piece and strategy will look like. Not everything will be within the council's sole gift, to deliver. If you take the issue that was raised through a number of groups, switch over from analog to digital and the impact of our ability to communicate in terms of that is a UK government strategy that's been put in place. And I think, if memory serves me right, it was paused for a while on the back of the storms. Mm-hmm. So not everything is 100% within the gift of the council to deliver, but what we do try to do is influence and also work with partners on what that longer term piece actually looks like.
And I presume there will be some kind of co-creation with communities in relation to plans for their particular community, Susan.
Yes, I think there was there are consultations that take place with communities, particularly where somebody's been, where a community's been hit with an event. But again, it can be what's the right long-term solution is sometimes harder to arrive at.
Fantastic. Fiona, I'm going to come to you next.
Thank you. So my role in the council is very much about planning and preparing for risks that are going to come at us in each year. So I'm not sitting at a strategic level looking at how we're going to build things and how we're going to put the infrastructure in. So I can't talk to that other than to, say, as Susan has said, I know there's huge commitment and work going on across the Grampian region, with all three councils and multi-agency looking at the bigger picture. But what I can talk to is what I do and my aims and objectives locally. And I know, again, Susan and in Murray, they're mirroring what we're doing. So we're putting together, and we talk about communication being key, and it absolutely is. We've actually got a comms plan ready to go, which is a social media platform. It's also got printed literature. We're going to be doing door drops in the key priority areas with historic flooding and other risks. So we've identified those, and we've started to do a lot more presentations like this to try and to build up networks and working with third sector as well. So what we've got about to happen is the creation of a new group in the city. So sadly, the city only have 2 formal groups, but I know there's loads of informal groups. So what I've been trying to do is saying, well, right, okay, who's out there doing something already? Bridge of Dawn, for example, a massive area in the city, and Denmore. What can we do to help you? Is there anybody already doing things? So we've now got the first community resilience group about to go this year and about to launch, but it's a kind of a group of people. So it's King's Community Church, it's the Men's Shed organisation, it's the Rotary, and it's the Community Council. So we've then got a new group, but it's harnessing all the volunteers and people around the existing groups. And the council, what we're bringing to it is how to help them identify the risk assessments, write their emergency plan for their community, exercise those plans. And I sit on, along with somebody from Scottish Fire and Rescue, I sit on their group and I advise and guide, and we offer free training and exercising. So we are all about communication. And I think for me, if we can get the Bridge of Dawn community group as a kind of model, this is how we're doing it. And we've learned from our Cooter and Cults groups how to do it, best practice and not reinventing the wheel. Then we will take that forward with our other groups. So when I'm out and about speaking to everybody like this, it's a call to arms. If you're interested, if you're part of a group, tell me, and we'll look at your area. And I can give you that email address at the end of this session today, because there is a general inbox for community resilience. So I'm sorry I can't answer the wider strategic piece for infrastructure, but locally there's a lot of work, including some funding, which is really exciting. For once, we've got some funding. So the grab boxes and bags that you talked about, any community group that is willing to take part and assist us with resilience work, we are able to fund a grab box, with loud hailers, with space blankets, with wind-up radios and torches, and we're able to do that, which we've not been able to do before. So I really feel there's a push behind it. So I'm quite excited. It's been a difficult few years, and we want to harness all that good effort and goodwill that we had from our public. So hopefully things like today will help to let you see that the councils are working towards making great improvements. And that's the other thing to say, we are working in partnership. So Aberdeenshire, City and Moray all have different risks and different sort of nuances, but we are all working as a group as well as working individually to make sure that we're learning from each other. And, Susan's colleagues and I work closely. So I think that's a really beneficial thing.
Fantastic, thank you, Fiona. And if there is a website or anything that gives information on that funding, it'd be great if you could pop that in the chat. Lee, do you feel like you've got knowledge to answer?
Yeah, well, I was just thanks. I was just going to add, from my own point of view, we have from Aberdeenshire, we've done various bits and pieces. We're working and going out and speaking to farmers, land use users, and just trying to raise awareness of and try and get land users as water managers, and things, and I see with the comment on the screen there about asking about the proposed flood scheme at Ballater, and there's things that we can speak to landowners about, one of the things we had at Methlick was they'd like bales of hay, after a harvest they had them quite close to the rivers, and they washed down Methlick and blocked all the bridge, and that contributed to flooding and things. So it's raising awareness of these sort of issues. There's things like the way the fields are ploughed and things. But when it comes to actual storing water and speaking to farmers, the difficulty is they've got under the Agriculture Act they've got food production. They're running a business. Areas of land that they would want to flood. It's normally areas that already flood. It's already parts of floodplain. It's not good bits of land. That ideally you want to identify areas that don't currently flood. To store more water on to make a difference. It's really difficult. A lot of farmers, they in previous I had experience at Tarland. Where we had a scheme all set up, and the back out. The farmers don't want to be seen as like the sole protectors. They don't want to take the response. So a lot of it, unfortunately, it does come down to the promoting schemes through the Flood Act. That's what the Flood Act's there for. It's identifying, taking it through. They're big, expensive schemes. Something like Ballater. It was a big. Storm Frank was a. I would say it was a big, scary flood event and needs a big, scary flood solution. If that's what your level of protection you want to achieve. It's a really difficult one, but like I said, it's not just as easy as speaking to farmers as well. There is certainly what Sam was saying, the awareness raising and speaking to them about improvements, but with regards to levels of flooding, it's not always, it's not just possible to just store water. You do need actual flood defences as well with the level of flooding we're seeing.
Brilliant, thank you. That's greatly. So now I'd like to kind of go on to the communication bit. We have touched about, Fiona was talking about it a bit, and so was Susan. But what we really, well, everybody actually, because I think Sam was as well. So there is there was a more general question that came out of Tara's group, which is how do we make the connection between those that work on the ground and those who are in the support services? How can we really strengthen that relationship and ensure that's a really beneficial one? And then the kind of sub question to that, which came out of the group that I was facilitating, which is the difficulty in having that kind of list of people who really need help during these kind of adverse events. So Fiona, I'll come to you first, and then we'll go around.
Thanks, Alison. A few things in that I'm probably going in reverse. So based on everything that happened over the last few years, we're all individually as well as across Scotland, but in our local authority areas, we're all working on a persons at risk database, which is a accumulation of health and social care information, NHS information, council held information. It's quite a complex system, but what it will allow us to use is GIS mapping. So when we have an issue in, say, Bridge of Dawn, we can ask the layer to show me where all the nursing homes are, where all of our persons at risk, perhaps, that have equipment that requires 24/7 power, etc., etc. So what I would say is, I can give comfort and assurance that these things are being moved forward dramatically. Huge effort is being put into that across all the local authorities. We've all agreed the kind of vulnerability categories, which I think is helpful, so that eventually we may see that City, Shire and Moray may be able to come together and give a Grampian-wide map and mapping. But this tool will assist greatly people like myself and Susan's teams to react and respond. And what we're doing with our community groups, when we get a resilience group that's willing to add to what they're already doing some resilience work, we add them to what we would call our asset register. So as an emergency planning officer, I have an asset register, which is of people, of equipment, of whatever it may be. So, and within that, we have a process of being able to activate, and we use WhatsApp groups to activate some of the key people across these community groups. I think the thing is, I mean, as part of their plan, we will, everybody's individual plans, we will give contact names and numbers of who you should speak to in the council and when. But fundamentally, the way it works is it's probably more likely that the council will contact that group first, especially if you're already in the process of being part of the resilience of the city or the shire. So with Bridge of Dawn, if I knew the area was a problem, I have a number I can call. They push out a WhatsApp message saying that the council are asking for support. We have a meeting point, etc. So there's a lot to do, but all the right things are happening and it is coming together. And I'm sure Susan would probably come in and concur that they're doing very similar. I hope that helps a little bit.
It does totally. I just wanted to kind of confirm, like, obviously it's great having that kind of register, and it would be something that you'd then give the information to the groups on the ground to help with. Would that be, would you be able?
So what we need to be very clear of is the groups, we're not asking them to do what a blue light service would do. We're asking them to support and wrap around the services. So what we would be doing is we would instigate communication with them to say, right, we are going to need to ask, do you have your guys that have got the 4x4s that are willing to work and take some stock from here to there? Do you have the ability to open the church and do teas and coffees for us if we need a warming hub or a welfare station? So not a formal rest centre, but, you know, some other activities. So it's got to be managed because we don't want people to think we're asking them to run in and put themselves in danger or do anything that hasn't been trained. And, you know, so even things like we're offering training like manual handling, and we're keeping a matrix of skills matrix of the individuals on the group. So are they somebody that wants to offer, you know, a listening ear and a cup of tea and coffee? Are they somebody that wants to offer manual taking sandbags out, or is it a driver, that kind of thing?
Fantastic. I mean, I guess the issue is, that what happens if the systems are down? Do you have that information in paper format?
Yeah, so we have paper format plans, and we also have the Loudhailer systems. It's easier in the city because it's a smaller location, and we have agreed areas that would become hubs. But at the moment, we're still working through all of those, and we haven't published them to the public because we're not ready to publish them to the public. If we had an incident tomorrow, we could very quickly get something happening, but we are in progress with what we call our power resilience plans, which are about those long periods of no comms, no power. But at the same time, in parallel, we've got to be working towards just the bad winter weather and the normal 24-hour, 36-hour situation. So it is quite complex.
It is, and I guess the message is for everybody to get in contact with Susan or Fiona's team to say, we're here, put us on your assets list, basically, as well.
I think Susan probably wants to come in.
Yeah, Susan.
Hi, Alison. The persons at risk database that or distribution that we're working together to establish across the piece in Grampian is going to be there to help the decision makers and the local authorities prioritise where they're going to put their resources. Given the geography that Aberdeenshire has and indeed Moray, there are particular challenges around that. So what we're looking to do is map where those individuals are and prioritise them according to their need, and indeed the consequences arising from whatever the event is. We wouldn't, as a matter of routine, be sharing that information with community groups. What I would say is there is nothing to stop a community resilience group having their own list of people in a particular neighbourhood that they would consider to be vulnerable, that they might feel that they want to door knock on. And I guess that comes back to that piece about us as individuals being good neighbours in our communities, and maybe knocking on that door to check that that elderly person is absolutely fine. But the persons at risk is very much around allowing us to prioritise where we need to put that in. And given the nature of why people will be on that list, it wouldn't be entirely appropriate to share that.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I think that some of the difficulties.
Yeah, that's mine. Apologies if I gave the wrong impression. It's a tool that we haven't had up till now.
Because one of the beauties is you can actually see that on a map, and you're able to identify those households that fall into that category that then need that level of that you need to send somebody out to, rather than perhaps having to do a much wider sweep.
Yeah, and that's great. I guess some of the issues that came up in our groups were the fact that there was that lag between the council getting involved in, 24-hour lag was sometimes longer, and then the community groups needed the information right then and there. So definitely,
there is absolutely nothing to stop a community group that has that information going out and checking on anybody that they may know, because one of the things that I guess Arwen taught us right off the bat was that as organisations, we could be as badly affected as the communities that we serve. Yes. And we've got to try, and we had those same communication issues. And therefore, it's that piece about we've got to be in a position to stand things up, and to come back to the is that likely to be immediate? It may not be if we are being affected. And what we want to do with some of the community resilience strategy work that we're doing is be able to say to communities and individuals, it may be 24, 48, 72 hours before we're in a position to have X, Y, and Z ready to support you. So in your preparedness, prepare to be able to support yourself for that period of time. To be prepared to support your household, your family, your community for that period of time. A really good example that we got during Malach and Corrie was the fact that we took a decision very early on that we were going to provide meals in certain locations prepared by school kitchens. We made the decision on the Friday, but it was it was Sunday afternoon before we could actually start to get that out the door, because the school kitchen needed to have power. We needed to make sure that they had the store, the supplies to be able to deliver on that, and that personnel could get there to do it. So it's that whole piece around that. But certainly absolutely nothing to stop a community having their own list of people that they consider vulnerable and going out and checking on them early doors.
Fantastic. Fiona, did you just want to quickly come in? I've got one more question I want to do.
Yeah, just really quickly to say, apologies again if PARD is a tool for the use by us because of GDPR, etc. So totally agree with everything that has been said by Susan. The comms plan that we're about to initiate just pre-October time will give people an idea of what should be in their household grab bags and what business. We're also focusing on our businesses and our business community to help them make sure they've got business continuity plans in place with all of that. So I think the comms, social media output and the leafleting should help, hopefully help, because as Susan rightly says, we could be 2 days before we can get in there and actually do anything. So, you know, fingers crossed that will help by sharing some messaging.
Yeah, and I just want to say at this point that what NESCAN Hub would like to do is have on our website a kind of resource page for people that a lot of the groups have given that said, you know, we've got this resource, we've got that, you know, the people that are really good examples, and to collate some of the videos from this event and put that on our website so that it can be somewhere that communities can go to gain help and good practice from each other. Now, Bill in the chat has been talking about the fact that most of what he's hearing about is about coping, not adaptation, which is true. And obviously the first question was about adaptation, and some of the things that came out of that was this disparity between things that are going on, but the fact that nobody knows about them, the general public. So how can the normal person in the street know what's going on, have some kind of like I suppose reassurance that there are plans in place and there is action being taken place, and what action there is. So how is that message going to come out, and how are you going to involve the communities in deciding some of these strategies as well? Who wants to take that first? Anybody want to stick their hand up? Sam, did you?
Go on, I'll dive in because I think the answer is you and I anyhow, right? Bill, I can understand if there's a frustration with the likes of SSE and people's expectation that utilities should be doing something about this. When you speak to the relevant teams in the utilities, they are trying to do something about it. There's limited capital budgets for everybody. It doesn't matter whether they're private sector or local authority, and everybody's going to go through a period of financial squeeze. So I think there's many of the people on the call are already saying none of the answers are simple. Many of them are multifaceted. They cross between private sector, public sector, individuals, commercial, and industrial, and it's really, really challenging pulling all of that together. It's notable that there hasn't been much discussion today about government level responsibility here, rather than just local authority. But so when I speak to the likes of SSE and contacts, or you reach out to them through CRA and we say, what are the long-term adaptation plans? There are teams looking at these issues. It's just you're talking about decadal type responses that are not going to be immediate. And then I think, Alison, it comes down to a CRA and the local authorities themselves, but also a NESCAN and you and I, to say we are looking for these things. We are trying to join the dots. We are going to work in partnership, and we are trying to raise profile. I'm going to repeat myself by saying I think the bigger concern is the broader members of the population rather than those who are on this call and dedicating time to the issue right now. We have a huge issue to turn around everybody's awareness of this, not just short term. Again, that's just an opinion really from myself more than anyone.
Thanks, Sam. I guess what the question was asking is, what plans do the council and all the kind of statutory authorities have to really show people? And I think it's very important to give that kind of reassurance to people that not only have we got, which I think, Fiona, it's a fantastic idea, doing the comms in relation to the grab bags and getting yourself as a person in the community ready, but also long term what we're doing to ensure that these don't happen, or they don't happen with the same severity. Is there some kind of comms coming out about that? Is there some kind of has somebody joined up, as Sam was talking about earlier, the dots to say these are all the things that are occurring? We are on it.
I think you and I are keen to try and make that happen at a regional level. And Sniffer and others are clearly trying to push forward at a national level. I think it's when it gets to a national, it gets messy. There's so much to be tackled in the climate change agenda at the moment that the funding and the initiatives are very, very disparate, and there's lots of things being attempted. this area will mature. Climate change, adaptation, and mitigation are going to become major areas of economic activity because they're going to have to. So I think it's starting to influence long-term planning when you long-term issues when you look at the likes of land use planning and resource strategies. It's also influencing capital expenditure for the likes of the utilities. But what it isn't doing is then resulting in communications that are sharing that out across a broader network of people. It's a bit disappointing. Hey, we still don't get much media coverage for adaptation. We get a lot of stuff about risk and flooding in Pakistan and 1/3 of a country, but we don't get much real coverage about how do we tackle that? What is really going on? And that's a shame. It needs to be more prominent.
It does need to, and I think that it's not really NESCAN Hub's role to kind of bring it all together. It is definitely kind of like central government and local government's role to actually to communicate what's going on. But I also like to say that University of Exeter is doing some amazing work in adaptation and providing, creating a map for trialing with the council there, to really have something visual, but also to have a community of practice for adaptation practitioners to share knowledge as well. So that's something to be aware of. Right, I'm conscious of the time. We said we'd finish around about 12:15. So I'm just going to quickly go around the panel and just say, is there anything more that you want to add, or any, what are your closing remarks? Lee, take away comments for people.
No, like I say, I think for Canada, raising awareness and signing up for the flood warnings, like I said, we do get involved in property level protection and that, but obviously the main thing is people being aware, and the flood. A lot of people get flood alerts, and it's the whole of Aberdeenshire get a flood alert, but it raises awareness, but then it's a specific flood warnings for individual locations where they are possible. So it's so yeah, I think between that, property level protection has a role, but we're trying to move away from sandbags, and they're not ideal, but it's what people rush for at the end. But it's being more prepared in that sort of regard, and yeah, working with the Scottish Flood Forum as well to, if can, where for insurance issues and things as well. So I think that'd be my final comments. Thanks.
Brilliantly. If you wanted to put into the chat the kind of the web page for signing up to flood alerts, that might be really useful. I do think it's a whole level of preparedness. Sam, do you want to give some closing remarks?
Yeah, I've slowly, since COVID, I've become I'm not a prepper, that's a stupidly used phrase, but I have to say, even right now, I'm currently working on, what is it at our household level? I'm really keen on that. Let's do a couple of things there. So I'll be real quick, Alison. Got to commend the community groups. You've got to commend the groups who presented today. You've got to commend Deeside Can and all the other community action groups for trying to raise awareness and share common sense. And then there is the simple steps you can start taking at home in terms of adaptation. Have you got the right gutters? Have you thought about actually having rainwater storage for next season and other things like that? We need to be careful that we don't get that confused between being a prepper and just facing the reality of adaptation in North East Scotland. Climate change impact is going to happen here. You want to see what it looks like down south. It's far more, they're getting real drought conditions as opposed to us. And then I love things like Amy. Amy's just joked, maybe we need TikTok adverts. Absolutely. This has got to be multi-generational, this message. It's got to go all the way through the younger groups, the working groups, and into the older groups as well.
Yeah, use all the tools in our arsenal, basically, to reach across everybody. Susan? Last closing remarks?
Thanks, Alison. I guess, unsurprisingly, there'll be a plug for the workshop that we're going to do in October, but I will send you the details for that, because what I can't stress enough is we don't want this, the community resilience strategy, to be a top-down strategy. We want it to be from the bottom up, what communities need. And so therefore we're very, very keen to engage with them, and also just a huge thank you to all of those community resilience groups right across Aberdeenshire that support their family, friends, neighbours when these adverse events occur.
Fantastic, Susan. I mean, please do send us any information, and we can put it in our newsletter, and Tara will put in the link to our newsletter signed up in the chat just now. But Susan, if you also have like a page that people can keep an eye on for any upcoming events or any ways that they can be involved in that kind of consultations and discussions, feel free to pop that in the chat just now too.
We will do.
Cool. Fiona, last but not least.
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me the time today. And all I would ask is, you know, if you are part of our city community and you are interested, please get in touch, even if it's just for a chat or more information. You know, we need our communities, and we thank them for all they've done already. But I think going forward, we're going to need them even more. So we're here if you wish to get in touch.
Cool. And can you pop the getting in touch email in the chat?
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So it's just over to me now to say thank you. It's been an amazing event. I've really enjoyed hearing from all the experiences of everybody on the call, and all the participants, as well as the presenters and the panelists. It's been great. You can see that there's an awful lot of passion out there and a real willingness to work together and help. As I say, NESCAN Hub are going to be looking at creating a space in our website to put all these resources so that you can find a way of getting that kind of giraffe resilience plan or whatever. But also, if you want to join NESCAN, then we are looking at getting working groups up and be able to share in amongst each other what's going on. And that's really, really vital. That's the whole point of why NESCAN was created. So please do join us and not just sign up to the newsletter. Just a reminder that there is an evening session tonight, 7 till 8:15. You don't have to come because you come to this one, but if you could promote that to any of your friends or contacts, that would be great. And we will be collating and sharing the findings from today, and we'll send the message out through your sign up. And we're also issuing a poll for feedback. So please do give us feedback so we can get better, improve the experience, or just feel glad that you loved it, basically. So big thanks to you, big thanks to the panelists and everybody who took part today, the presenters. It was just fantastic, and we will be in touch. So take care. Thank you. And can Tara, Karina and Chris stay on, please?